Hey there, fellow foodies. Today is a great day to take one of those mini vacations we like to call lunch. On today's lunch, I interview Steven about his recent trip to Peru, and this was the kind of trip where you know something is wrong when every cab driver you take a ride with asks you if your luggage was lost, but your luggage actually wasn't lost. And so there's a show I love to recommend to fellow travelers. That show's called An Idiot Abroad, and the premise of that show is Ricky Gervais is making his friend's life miserable by sending him around the world at the worst times of year, staying in the worst places, and really just having a lot of fun at his expense. And I would like to say that Steven's trip is on par with that, except no one did it to him, and so if Steven were to have a show, it would be called I Did It to Myself. So enjoy this fantastic story from Steven. Everybody, I'm here with Steven, and he just got back from a really awesome trip in Peru. He saw Machu Picchu and a bunch of other stuff. And so, Steven, why don't you tell us a little bit about your trip?
Okay, so Peru is a place that I've wanted to go to for a while. There's a lot of culture, a lot of history. It's pretty interesting art. The food is amazing. I didn't know quite how amazing the food was until we started the blog. South American food, and especially farther South American food, is something that I discovered through the blog that I really like. So Peru is, I wouldn't say it was necessarily a bucket list country, but it was definitely high on my list. And so this was my first time to go to South America. I've traveled a lot, but most of it's been in Europe or the States. So this was the first time to really get down into South America.
Yeah.
So it was a fairly short trip. I was in Peru for, I believe, 6.5 days, which is a very, very short trip for Peru. A lot of people that go there spend a lot more time.
So you said 6 days.
Yes.
So what did you hope to accomplish in 6 days? Tell me, what was your agenda?
Well, the difficult thing for me was balancing nature and scenic things with food. And that's really where the big...
Yeah, there's so much in Peru, it's hard
exactly.
choices to make.
You have the Amazon, you've got the jungle, you've got the Andes, and either of those alone could take weeks just by themselves. But on the other hand, because of the blog, I wanted to spend time eating, and there's a lot of amazing food located in Lima. Lima is definitely one of the cultural capitals, helping bring back Amazonian traditional food, and so that was something really important to me as well for my trip. So I wanted to be able to do some stuff in nature and also eat a lot of food while I was there as well. And the stuff in nature definitely proved to be the more challenging.
Yeah, how so?
Of the two. So obviously I grew up in Houston, which is at sea level, and I've never done a lot of skiing or anything like that where I've been at elevation, and so I flew from Houston to Lima, and from Lima to Cusco. And when you fly from Lima to Cusco, you go from sea level to 11,000 feet in elevation. Which
so that's what, double what Denver is, just for perspective?
It's double what Denver is.
It's like flying to the top of Pikes Peak.
Yeah, it basically is. And the thing is, people will get altitude sick just going to Denver. So,
all right, I'm liking it so far.
I flew.
The stage is set.
I flew into Cusco, and altitude sickness takes between 6 and 12 hours. I now know this. Takes between 6 and 12 hours to really set in.
How long had you been in Cusco?
So my flight landed in the afternoon. So right as I was going to dinner is when the nausea started hitting. And so I championed my way through dinner.
Good job. Mama didn't raise a quitter.
Passed out in the hostel, and then the next morning at 7 a.m.
Hostel. Now, is this describe the hostel? Is this like the movie The Hostel? So you have your kidneys?
I do still have one of them at least. No, so traveling. This was my first trip traveling alone. So this was country number 15. But this was actually, surprisingly, the first trip I've ever done internationally traveling alone, and where I also didn't know people there. For example, when I went to Paris earlier this year, I have friends there, so it's not quite like you're completely alone there. And so this was my first time traveling alone, and due to the kind of eating that I was planning on doing in Lima, I needed to save money elsewhere in my trip.
So let's caveat from Cusco. Tell me about the kind of eating, because I've been to Lima as well, and the food scene is amazing.
So the food scene is amazing, and you have a big range from street food. Some of the things we've eaten on for the blog, like beef heart.
Yeah.
You can get it from a vendor on the street. Lima is also home to a lot of fine dining. The restaurant Central is there.
What restaurant?
Central.
Okay.
Which was, if you've seen Chef's Table,
Right.
that was one of the first
Yeah.
restaurants that they covered.
Kind of a big deal.
It is a really big deal. If memory serves, it's number 3 or 4 in the world. That is a very, very big thing. A lot of times when you think of like world famous fine dining, you think of Paris or somewhere like that,
Right.
not necessarily Peru. But they have that, and there's another restaurant called Astrid y Gaston, which I think is number 13 in the world as well.
Okay.
And
So did you go to either of these?
I went to the second one.
The second one, okay.
Yeah, I went to Astrid y Gaston. Central is booked about 5 months in advance typically.
You're little people. What can I say?
I know.
You should have told them you were Terabeza. They would have opened the seat right up. We're
you
globally
know,
known, folks.
Our reputation is gaining steam, but not quite that fast.
Right.
But yeah, so my trip was actually booked less than that amount of time in advance, so I wasn't able to get there. There's a big range with the food in Lima. You can eat amazing things very cheaply, or you can eat amazing things very expensively.
Okay, so tell us about the restaurant you went to. So this is what you say, number 13?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's number 13. Astrid y Gaston, I went there and I did the tasting menu. Now, granted, this
Okay.
was at the end of the trip, so I don't know if you want to talk about this before.
No,
Okay.
we'll do it now.
I did the tasting menu.
We just need to show your commitment to powering through.
Yes. So I did the tasting menu. The thing is, especially if you're eating alone, just ordering off a menu can kind of be difficult sometimes.
So just order everything.
Well, obviously, but no, because the thing is, like, the way we eat for the blog is like we order a bunch of dishes and then we get to taste everything.
Yeah.
And so when we're eating lunch for the blog, it's almost like a pre-feed tasting menu, right?
Right.
Because we're not eating an entire plate
Correct.
of each thing. We're
Correct.
just eating a couple bites here and a couple bites there. And so when I went to Astrid y Gaston, I decided to do the tasting menu, which was 17 courses.
Okay. Now are these like full-size things, or is it designed for an individual person?
It's technically designed for an individual person.
What size person? 17 sounds
Bigger
like a
than
lot of
me.
anything.
It's a lot bigger than me because the thing is, each plate is relatively small. Each plate might be 3 or 4 bites at the most, but when you stack that up, it's like Thanksgiving dinner.
Right.
You get a little bit and a little bit.
What does a 17-course meal cost?
So I did it with wine pairings as well,
Okay.
which is just another level
Okay.
of dedication or sadism, depending on how you
Does
look
it
at
come with a subscription to AA?
I need one now. No, so I believe the dinner ran me about $400 or $450.
So I think I walked past that place one time and took a whiff that was too long, and they charged me 20 soles.
Basically. I knew that that's something that I wanted to do. I wasn't gonna be hitting every fine dining restaurant in Lima, but I knew that I wanted to do one. I wanted to do either Astrid y Gaston or Central, because it's an experience. It's very high end, but they also use a lot of like quality, locally sourced ingredients or ingredients sourced in the Andes or the Amazon.
Well, that is one of the unique things about Peruvian food is some of their cuisine is things that can only be found in Peru.
A lot of their cuisine is things that can only be found in Peru, or can
Very
only
jealous.
only can be found fresh in Peru.
Okay.
So, for example, the ají chiles that they use in things like ceviche, like we can get them here in the States, but like even at our like higher end like boutique grocery stores, we can't get them fresh.
Right.
We can get it in a chili paste or a puree or something like that,
Yeah.
but it's not fresh. And so there's just a quality plus like, I mean, I'm very into wine, so like I'm very cognizant of the idea of terroir, which is like the place it's grown and it represents, and you can't always fake that somewhere else. You know, like
Right.
you can import something, but it's not always the same. And so I knew I would be spending that, and that was a big part of the trip. I mean, that cost as much as my flight did.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It is, I mean, fine dining is...
It's a great price flight, a terribly priced dinner.
It is, but the thing is, it's an investment, and the thing is, like, if
In your
it's-
future, hopefully.
Yes, but the thing is, like, if that's something you prioritize, you can plan your trip around that,
Right.
and you can save money elsewhere.
So,
For
so when you
example,
say plan your trip around, are you mean like time to digest? Describe the at the human experiential level. What type of body commitment are we talking about? Does it take to down 17 courses?
I would say weeks of training.
Okay. I mean, do you have a jaw that unhinges right here?
Unfortunately, no. So it was 17 courses with wine pairings for each, which is a lot of food and a lot of wine. And there inevitably, you get to this point in a meal where you're full, you're stuffed.
At what
you've
course
had
did
enough.
you realize this is the human stopping point?
8.5.
8.5.
And that was 2 hours into my dinner. And for the Americans watching this, thinking, oh my God, how did you spend 2 hours eating dinner? The entire meal actually took about 3 hours and 50 minutes from start to finish.
Yeah. I spend 2 hours every night. I don't know what people have a problem.
I know, but no, and that was the thing is, at about 2 hours, it was like I really need to stop, but you got to keep going.
Yeah, power through.
Because
So did you complete all 17?
I did complete all 17.
How did you feel? I mean, do you now have a sheep stomach where you have multiple chambers, or how does this?
No, but I wish it would make it easier.
Will your children be born with
They
an extra
rolled
stomach?
They rolled me into a cab and it dropped me off at my hotel, and I promptly.
By a cab, did you mean an ambulance?
But yeah, so it was a great meal. It was a wonderful experience. It was a horrifically aggressive tasting menu, though. I've done a lot of tasting menus.
Did they advertise it as like horrifically aggressive?
They did not. And they should have. It should definitely come with a Surgeon General warning, because you're going to need lap band after. No, so I knew that was something that was going to be important to me, because I wanted to experience the full scope of food in Lima and Peru.
Okay.
And so street food is important, but also
Right. The other end of the spectrum.
Peru, like a lot of people might look at Peru as a developing country, but on the flip side of that, they do have a lot of fine dining. There's so much more there than just eating beef heart off of this, from a vendor on the street.
Yeah.
There is a lot more to their cuisine that they have to offer, and so I wanted to be able to experience that. So for the rest of the trip, I was traveling very cheaply, and something that is not very commonplace in the States is hostels, both in quality and price that they have there. And so as I planned my trip, I realized how feasible it would be to use hostels to my advantage.
Right.
Especially if you're traveling solo, it's a very cheap alternative.
So what you're saying is you sacrificed bodily safety and potentially losing an organ for that's how good Peruvian food is.
I think
that's the main line here. Is how good Peruvian food is.
That is how good Peruvian food is, but I think that's a misconception about hostels.
Okay.
We've all seen the movie Hostel, love it.
Do we?
Maybe, but we've all seen that, but that's not really what hostels are like. There's a range. If you want a party hostel, you can find a party hostel.
Yeah.
They definitely exist, but a lot of people backpack through South America, and so there are a lot of people in the same position as you in that hostel. Some of them are very young, some of them are very old.
Yeah.
I was in one hostel in Cusco, and one of the people in the dorm looked like she was in her 80s. So it's not just young people there to party. And so hostel, I mean, the hostels I was staying in were nicer, and they were running between $6 and $15 a night.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Which is not bad. Now, granted, that's for a bed in a dorm room. There were 18 other bunk beds in there, so
Yeah.
there is a sacrifice to be made there, but it was a great experience. I didn't have any problems. They seemed fairly safe.
No. Okay, so let's
Go back to my altitude
fast
sickness.
forward back to, you're at 11,000 feet, maybe for the first or second time in your life. Very rapidly got there. Did not,
acclimate in
yeah,
any
didn't
way.
acclimate. Didn't do any, hydro exercise to deprive yourself of oxygen in advance.
No. I didn't know a lot about altitude sickness or oxygen deprivation
So
prior.
what did you learn about altitude sickness?
I learned a lot. Acute mountain syndrome starts around 8,000-ish
Do you feel
feet.
like it makes you seem less wimpy if you say acute mountain syndrome?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. It's the medical term for little bitch.
Fair enough.
I don't know if we're gonna have to bleep that.
Fair enough.
No, but the thing is, it starts around the 8,000 foot mark, and after that, typically you're only supposed to ascend 1,000 feet per day.
Okay.
And so I ascended 4,000 feet past that in a single day.
Okay. Now, why did you do this? What was your decision-making tree behind
The
that?
decision-making tree was equal parts lack of planning and preparation, and I only had 6 days, so I had no other choice.
Okay. Now, from what I understand you're doing this all in advance of Machu Picchu,
Yes.
right? Okay. Now, from what I understand, there's kind of two sides of it, or two mountains, if you will.
Well, there's not only Machu Picchu is Peru's pyramid,
Okay.
right? When I went to visit you in Egypt, the question every single person asked me was, "Did you go see the pyramids?" To which I always had to answer, "Which ones?"
Yeah.
Because
Which
we saw
one
a
of the
bunch them.
3,000 pyramids in Egypt? did you
Exactly,
see?
and they were like, "Well, the 3," and I was like, "Well, which 3?"
Right.
They're like, "You know," and I was like, "The pyramids at Giza, there are 9 that you see if you go around the other side." And so Machu Picchu is a little bit like that, in that that's what everyone knows because that's what's on the postcard. Whereas in the vicinity of that, there is a whole lot more to be found. And so you have not only Machu Picchu, but you also have the Sacred Valley, which has a lot of Incan era ruins and just a lot of natural beauty as well.
Sacred Valley. That sounds like something that'll appear in the next Nick Cage movie.
Well, maybe. And so, but in general, yes, this was in preparation for Machu Picchu. So from Cusco, the only convenient way to get there is by train, because the city at the base is called Agua Caliente, and there are no roads that go there. So you either have to take a train from Cusco to Agua Caliente, or you can take a car from Cusco to the hydroelectric station at the base of the Urubamba River, and then you can walk along the train tracks 3 hours back to Agua Caliente. So those are kind of your two options. So you can't just drive. You can't just drive.
They
to
should have made
Machu
it more
Picchu.
convenient.
They should, but it's not America. So and see, this is the thing is
Technically, it is the Americas. Just to be clear, we are aware of geography.
yes. And so the thing is, like, there are certain steps that you have to do to get there, right? So typically you fly into Lima from the States.
Yeah.
You can fly directly into Cusco, but it's very, very expensive.
Yeah. So fly to Lima, from Lima to Cusco.
And then
Cusco
from Cusco
by train.
Well, see, this is where the planning or lack thereof comes to play.
Okay.
The trains from Cusco go in the morning, early morning. So there's a 7 o'clock or an 8 o'clock train, basically. And if you wanna go to Machu Picchu, you can take a bus up from the town of Agua Caliente up to the main ruins. However, Machu Picchu sits in this saddle of 2 other mountains. One is Huayna Picchu and the other is Montaña Machu Picchu. And if you want to go up those, there are 2 ticketed time slots a day. You can enter from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. or from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. But if your train is arriving at noon, you have to stay the night and go the next morning.
Okay.
So that's
So which one of those did you do?
So I like to seek out the road or staircase, in this case less traveled. And so when I was doing the little bit of research that I did for this trip, I read that Montaña Machu Picchu had fewer tourists.
Yeah, the other one, that's for suckers.
Huayna Picchu is for suckers. There are a bunch of tourists there. There's some ruins up there, which is cool.
I wonder why more
cool
tourists go to that one and not the other one, Stephen. Do you have any insight on that?
Well, one might think that it's because there are ruins on top. The harsher reality is that it is half of the height of Montaña Machu Picchu.
And so you picked the one that was twice as tall.
I picked the one with fewer tourists.
After no prep.
When I was hiking up a staircase, I discovered that I picked the one that was twice as tall. And so they estimate that it takes about an hour and a half or 2 hours to get up there. It's about 1.5 kilometers, and Montaña Machu Picchu is about a 2,000-foot ascent. So you're essentially walking up a 300-story building on stairs.
Okay.
There are no flat parts of the trail. It's stairs. And along with nausea and fluid buildup in your lungs, dizziness, all of that stuff.
Suicidal thoughts.
Yes. At altitude, you also actually get sunburnt much quicker, exponentially quicker, because the ozone is thinner. There's less ozone.
And you're closer to the equator in Peru.
You're closer to the sun, that flaming ball of fire that we love severely. And so my beautiful Aryan pale self did not have sunscreen on. And I was, I'm fairly active, and I'm not averse to physical activity, and so I actually made it up the mountain in about 45 minutes. I was very proud of myself.
So that's what you made, 2,000 feet in 45 minutes?
2,000 feet in 45 minutes.
Pretty good
clip. I was moving, and I got to the top.
Did you see any visions when you were on top?
No, unfortunately, no. Ayahuasca is going to happen the next trip, but I got to the top. The view is beautiful. You're looking at all of these mountains. You can see Machu Picchu down there. You can see the river, the hydroelectric station. It's amazing. And then I realized I was very, very sunburned because I hadn't worn sunscreen. I was traveling very light. I was.
How light were you traveling? Paint the picture.
This was my first solo trip. I didn't want to be weighed down by things. I wanted to have a very
Buddhist of you to show some detachment.
Yes, I wanted to have
material gain.
Exactly, because
and sunscreen.
You don't need it. I was there for the experience, which meant cosmetics didn't play a whole.
Non-essential.
It didn't play a big part in my packing strategy, and so there was no sun. I didn't pack sunscreen. Yeah. I'm very light skinned, so
but there's a point of sunburn where it's no longer a matter of cosmetics. It's a matter of retaining your skin.
Well, we'll get there. And so, I got to the top of the mountain, and I could feel.
Wait. So how light did you pack?
I packed in an.
How detached were you?
I packed in an 18-liter backpack, which is.
Okay, we're Americans. How many gallons is that?
Who cares? We're Americans. No, it's there are 3.8 liters.
This is like just a regular day pack.
Yeah, size. I mean, this is actually this is what I brought.
Okay,
so
that's a nice, very.
This is like what you would think of as a small laptop bag.
Yeah.
It's
very small laptop bag.
It's on par with what you would carry to college and have your laptop and a couple of books in.
Yeah. Do you think college students wear sunscreen?
Some of them probably. The smart ones.
It's why they're in college.
No, so I'm sitting at the top of the mountain having this great experience, and I am very, very sunburnt. And at some point, you're on the top of a mountain.
Yeah. There's nothing up there.
There's no little. This isn't the Middle East. There's no one there selling a bottle of sunscreen and some, Snickers or whatever.
Just for the reference there, anywhere you go in the Middle East, no matter how remote, there's some 10 or 12-year-old with a cooler with some Coke and Fanta, Sprite, Kit Kat, Snickers, etc. Doesn't matter where you go, you can find what you need for a price, for a fee. Small little baksheesh, some tip.
Capitalism at its finest.
That's right.
But
Peru's socialist, so why would you expect to see that?
I should have expected the government to be there.
That's right.
So you're at the top of the mountain and you're sunburnt, and you can't you can't just give up. Like, you've gone halfway around the world.
That's right. Don't quit.
You literally climbed a mountain, and just because you're sunburnt, you can't stop. There's a certain inevitability about travel that you have to keep going.
Right.
Or
you wind up stuck somewhere.
You wind up stuck somewhere, or you encounter more serious medical problems. I mean, you can't just camp out on a mountain.
Right.
Because,
you could die.
Yeah. And obviously it was nowhere near that dangerous, but you just have to keep going. And so I had to hike all the way back down, and then because of the way I had planned my day, I wanted to see the ruins first in the morning, the mountain.
I love that you use air quotes.
Yeah. I wanted to go up the mountain first to be able to look down on the ruins in the morning where it's typically more clear. And then I was going to come down the mountain and then tour the main ruins at Machu Picchu. So then, again, I haven't seen Machu Picchu yet, and I'm horrifically sunburnt in the course of an hour and a half. And so I ended up having to go through all of the ruins and then... Getting to.
I'm sorry you were punished in this
The first world pains are very real. So I went through all the ruins, took the bus down, and overpaid for some aloe vera and some sunscreen.
At that point, how much would you have paid?
I shouldn't admit this on camera.
Just write it on a napkin and pass it across the table.
I believe I paid about 55 soles for a small travel bottle of SPF 90 sunscreen, which the conversion rate was 3-to-1, so that's about $15 US dollars.
I feel like you got off cheap, I'm just saying.
I got off cheap, but I also got scammed at the same time.
I mean, they could see how red you were. They should have jacked the price up.
The next day, I took the train back to, I take that back. That day, when I came down the mountain, I took the train back to Cusco. Spent the night in Cusco, and then the next day I had a full day in Cusco where I could walk around the city. The historic center around the Plaza de Armas is amazing. And so like I wanted to have time in Cusco to walk around, see the churches, and then be able to go into the Sacred Valley. There's salt mines near Maris. There are some other Incan ruins. There's a stepped, essentially pit. They don't really know what it was used for, but basically because of the way, there are 4 of them actually. You only see one on the postcards, but there are 4. The way the terraces fall and the direction that they're oriented in relation to the sun and the wind, there's actually, I believe, about a 50-degree temperature difference between the top and the bottom.
Higher or lower?
Lower.
Lower, okay.
So it gets...
It's like a solar oven.
Yeah.
So no,
it gets
cooling.
colder.
Colder.
Yeah, because cold air falls,
Yeah.
hot air rises. And so you can see some things like that. And so there's also a town called Chinchero, which has some great ruins as well. And so that was my day to go do all that. Well, mind you, I have 3rd-degree sunburns. Part of my forehead had blistered. I was sunburnt so bad. And then when I went into the valley, again, air quotes, because this valley was at about 12 or 13,000 feet in elevation. I
suppose it's all about perspective.
I was actually going higher than I was in Cusco. So that day, I was even more altitude sick than I was, and I also got even more sunburnt than I had been. And so it's easy to look and go, oh, that must have been so miserable. You know, you're sunburnt, you're sick, you know, things didn't get planned well, so it's not that they're not necessarily going according to plan, but, you know, you're doing things in the wrong order. Because a lot of people that go to Peru, there's a specific order that they travel through Peru that they slowly ascend so they don't have to deal with acclimation and things like that. Or the other thing that a lot of people do that's very common is, like, I met some other people in the hostel that had been in Cusco for 5 days, sitting in the hostel doing nothing. They were just sitting there acclimating.
So these people are what we would call sissy planners.
Yes.
Right, okay.
As opposed to non-planners.
Non-planners,
like me.
just gonna tough it out. Give it the good old college try.
Yeah. So I didn't do that. I flew directly in. I climbed a mountain the next day. The following day, I was at an even higher elevation.
And you just thought, if this feels bad,
wait till that
let's
17-course
maximize
tasting menu.
So that happened after.
Yeah, that happened after.
Okay.
That was at the end. of the
Okay.
trip. Because I mean, the front end of my trip was seeing Machu Picchu and the Sacred Valley, and then after that, I flew back to Lima, and then I had 2.5 days in Lima.
Okay.
And that was kind of the time that I allotted to myself to eat and to see art and things like that. Because I mean, obviously Machu Picchu and the valley, you've got a lot of important like archaeological ruins there, but you don't necessarily have the art there that is in
Right.
Lima. And Lima has a wide range to their art, from pre-Columbian artifacts to paintings, and then they've also got newer art as well. Barranco is a district near Miraflores that's very hip and trendy. It's very walkable. There's a lot of street art. It's close to
So what was the most unique piece of art that you saw?
I don't. I mean, there's an obvious answer to that because.
I've also been
trying
to
to
Peru
trap me
before.
into this? The Larco.
There's no trap. It's just your opinion.
I went to several museums. One of which was the Larco, which is an amazing gallery of pre-Columbian artifacts of all kinds.
What sort of artifacts do they have, Steven?
They've got Incan gold and silver. They've got a lot of pottery and.
Tell us about the teapot.
Unfortunately, the Larco is famous or infamous for having a gallery of erotic pottery depicting all manner of things.
Erotica.
Erotic and even beyond. I mean, they had a teapot that was depicting childbirth, which I personally wouldn't describe as erotic, but
What's Spanish for the water broke?
I don't know.
You know, it's interesting. There are a number of things like that around the world.
Erotic pottery.
No, no. There's a place in South Korea that is for lack of a better word, a penis park, and there's all manner of phallic symbols there. I'm told. I've
Good
never
luck.
been.
I think it's good luck if you rub it or something. There actually is one.
That if you Google it, and I'm not saying to Google it, and I'm not saying I've Googled it, but if you were to Google it,
Not
I'm
at
sure
work.
there's all manner of pictures of people doing just that with tree-sized phalluses.
Yes. So obviously the Larco is interesting for that. Mali is kind of like the National Museum of Art in Lima. Had a lot of paintings, which was very interesting to see because as you travel, even globally, a lot of times when you're in art museums, especially fine art museums, painting is typically focused more on European painters. Because in certain times, the big focus of the art world was in, the Renaissance.
We don't need to air quote it. The Renaissance is
Well,
a real thing.
I mean, yeah, but like when people say that, a lot of times they're meaning Italian.
Right.
Like that's what you think of when
Yeah.
you think that. You don't.
Art is very Eurocentric.
Yeah, you don't think about what other art was created during that time period, and so it was interesting to be able to see Peruvian paintings and see the way that they interpret things. For instance, White Jesus, because I mean a common.
So they have white Jesus.
They
there.
have White Jesus there.
Yeah, we found that white Jesus is kind of the globally preferred Jesus of choice for reasons unbeknownst to us because
He wasn't white.
you read the story, he's not white, he's not American, he's Middle Eastern, so not
no,
white Jesus.
White Jesus. There are certain things that as you start to travel, you see throughout the world.
Right.
For example,
You notice the pattern.
Yeah, you notice a pattern. White Jesus is one of them.
So what was white Jesus in Peru?
White.
He's white,
Very
okay.
Caucasian. Long flowing hair, nicely trimmed beard. Brown hair, blue eyes, that kind
A
of thing.
noticeable lack of swarthiness.
Yes. But you notice other things as well. For example, balconies. When I was traveling in the Middle East, when we were in Cairo, they had these balconies that were kind of extended out over the street,
Yeah.
and then there was like lattice work over it. And so when you look at it from the street, all you see is like this wooden lattice work.
Yeah.
You can't really see inside of it.
Right.
But it allowed the women to be able to see and participate in this in
the
the
street life,
happening.
yeah.
The street life, what was happening below. And
Without having to get down there in the mix in the frame.
and there were some plazas in Lima that had the same type of architecture. So it's always fun to see those kind of things. And so that obviously is older. And then as far as with the art and the galleries, there are a lot of newer, more contemporary galleries as well. For example, the very famous fashion photographer Mario Testino is Peruvian. And so he has a gallery in Barranco as well. So there's a lot. I mean, again, it goes back to people only know Machu Picchu. That's all they know of Peru,
Right.
or maybe Cuy, which is guinea pigs.
Yeah.
And so they may know that, but they don't really know the full scope of it.
So
there's a lot there. There's a lot to see. It's an amazing place.
Yeah, so let's get back to food for a moment. What was your favorite thing that you had the whole time?
Oh God.
Was it at I forget the name, the place was
Astor
setting-
de Gaston.
Was it there?
It's hard to say. It's hard to say because obviously I'm an omnivore. I love eating. I love eating everything. I really, it's a very spiritual experience for me. You know, like because when you eat, you partake of something, whether it's by yourself or with someone, and you get to experience time and culture and history and place all in this one tidy thing. It brings together so many things, and so
Well, and culinary arts, they're really unnatural when you think about it. So you eat a meal cooked by someone. This is a product, like you said, in time and space and culture.
and of a
That
person,
if you were
and-
just living there and had none of that, you would just be eating leaves and sticks and whatever. You know, all of that
Exactly.
has been created and formed over time.
And so I want to say ceviche. I had some
Ooh, I love ceviche.
wonderful, like at Astor de Gaston, I had some amazing ceviche. But when I was in Cusco, I ate at a restaurant there, and I had an amazing trout dish. And the trout had been caught from the Urubamba River that morning, and so it was amazing as well. So I don't know that I would necessarily say that I have a favorite thing that I ate. The food there is all wonderful.
Yeah.
But ceviche, ceviche is a very, very special place in my heart, just because it's so fleeting. Because of the way it's made, it has a lot of depth and complexity to the taste, but it's not something like coq au vin that gets cooked over a long time and develops that. It develops it very quickly, and as you're eating through it, it's changing.
Yeah.
You know, as the acid from the citrus juices interacts with the fish, it's chemically cooking it, and so you don't have to scarf it down, but it evolves in front of you, and it changes, and it takes on new depth and dimension as you're eating it, which is an amazing thing. So I love ceviche.
So when we had ceviche, maybe not for the first time, but when we featured it the first time on the blog, we did it at a little restaurant, La Guitarra con Sazón.
Yes.
And they have one of my favorite ceviches in the world because they include mango and avocado to what is otherwise just ceviche mixto. And so in that they combined all these flavors and they called it ceviche nativo, native ceviche.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm not Peruvian, I'm not an expert on ceviche. It's not for me to tell them what belongs, what doesn't. But my first trip to Peru was me looking like an idiot, wandering into place after place after place, asking for ceviche, but then seeing if they had it with avocado and mango, and they looked at me like I was crazy.
I guess we should explain for people that don't necessarily know what ceviche is, because before I had it with the blog, I didn't really know what it was.
Yeah.
I thought it was a raw fish dish that had like lemon on it or whatever, because I didn't really know a lot about the dish. With Peru, traditionally ceviche is a dish that they take fish, and then they take another thing they call leche de tigre, tiger's milk, and it is basically a mix of lime juice, cilantro, and then you take
tiger milk.
Yeah, you take red onions. You take red onions and you slice them very thinly,
Yes.
and you put them in a bowl of ice
And
water.
it becomes heaven.
You put them in a bowl of ice water and let them sit, and then you drain it, and basically it takes off some of the sharpness of the onions, and then you add that, and you can let that marinate. And then they'll add different chiles. They'll use ají limo, ají amarillo, which are chiles that are, I believe, indigenous to Peru, but we can't really get them in the States as easily. And they've got this great like smoked fruit kind of taste, and they're spicy, but it's a different kind of spice from something like a jalapeno or a serrano, because it doesn't consume you. You take a bite and your mouth is filled with spice, and then you can have a drink and it goes away, and you can come back to it.
Right.
And so they'll take the tiger's milk, and then you put it on top of the raw fish, and the acids in the citrus juice chemically cook the fish. And so if
It's more cured than cooked.
yeah, but it's the same process by which
Yeah.
the fibers of the protein in the meat change. And so the thing is, if you eat it very quickly, it's like sushi. Whereas like if you let it sit, or if it's hot outside, it speeds up the process. And if you let it sit, the fish will turn white and even get dry and flaky, as though you had overcooked it. So that's what ceviche is, a very fleeting dish.
So as I walked around Lima and then Iquitos, so kind of the other opposite side of Peru from where you were in Cusco, kind of a jungle town. It's the largest city in the world that you cannot drive to. You have to traditionally take a boat there, or now you can fly. No one offered it, and they looked at me like I was crazy when I asked for it. Finally, I got to know one of the restaurant owners and asked if he would put mango in it. The restaurant's called Mangoes, so I thought, here's my shot. And so he put mango in it. He looked at me like I was crazy. I said, look, just try one bite with mango, and he did. And so I think it's probably called like ceviche americano or something like this now. But the irony is that I tasted it first at a Peruvian restaurant here in Houston. So did you ever find it with mango, avocado, anything different, or was it just more standard or mixto?
Obviously, I mean, Astro de Gaston is a progressive restaurant, but they're very much paying homage to traditional ingredients and recipes and their culture. And so it didn't have it, but it was very good. It was very
That's good.
nonetheless.
Okay, so one of the things that we really embrace with the blog and just the two of us and our lifestyle and our culture is to try to live authentically, to try to figure out what is the local situation and get involved there and kind of move as they do, live as they do, as much as we can as outsiders. And also kind of balancing that when you go on a trip to Machu Picchu, you're going to a tourist place. But you kind of hit a lot of snags in the road. So how would you kind of balance all these ideas?
And I think it's worth noting, like I would say I'm reasonably well internationally traveled. I can speak some Spanish, but there comes a point, even when you're going to a tourist destination, I would assume that Machu Picchu is a pretty tourist destination. But like even there, like you go and the place where you buy the bus ticket, the lady working there when I was buying my bus ticket didn't speak any English. And I mean, 2,500 visitors a day go to Machu Picchu. And so you definitely have to roll with what happens in front of you. And you can't have an ego. You can't think, I'm coming here, I'm spending money, I should have this the way I want it or expect it, because what will happen is you will not...
You won't get it.
You won't get it.
And your money's irrelevant.
And yeah, it is, because the thing is, like, if I had missed my train from Cusco to Agua Caliente, I could not have even been the obnoxious American tourist and thrown money at a cab driver and just driven it, even if I wanted to,
Right.
because there's no road that goes there.
You're on an island, very much so.
Essentially, and so you travel, you get out as much as you put in, because if you're looking at it and going, this isn't going right, this isn't what I wanted, this isn't how I expected it to be, I'm sunburnt, I'm sick, everything's taking forever, you're gonna have a horrible trip, and so you can't look at it like that. You have to embrace the experience.
Pain. Oh, this is the experience.
Yes, the pain of the experience. You have to embrace the moment God, it sounds so new age, but like you have to embrace the moment that you're
Very
in.
zen of you.
Yeah, you have to embrace the moment that you're in and what's happening and be able to appreciate it for what it is. Because if not, you're going to be so busy trying for the thing you're expecting that you miss the cool thing that's happening in front of you.
I think that idea of just being present is something that's very lacking in a lot of travelers. And even non-travelers, right? So you can see this very much so with the advance of smartphones. So instead of being in the moment and experiencing and enjoying it for what it is, people are more focused on getting a picture that honestly we very rarely go back and look at. We've captured it maybe half decently, probably not, but
nowadays,
we're not present and we don't look at what we were present for.
Well, see, now people aren't even after the picture. They're after the Snapchat.
Ah.
Like it's even more. It's
even more temporary.
Yeah, it can be even more fleeting than just a picture.
So in many ways, their social media followers are more present in their situation, that brief snapshot of it, than they are.
Very much so. When I went to Chicago and I went up in the Willis Tower, everybody goes into the glass thing that hangs over, and what do? They take a selfie, and they're looking up.
Yeah.
Which what they should do is take a photo of their shoes looking down.
What they should do
is not take a photo at all.
Never step out over glass that high up. Is really what they should not do.
And see, this is actually a challenge that I have since I am a professional photographer.
Yeah.
I make a living taking photos, and so for me, I try very, very, very hard to disconnect. I carry a camera with me when I travel, but I actually took more photos on my phone than I did with my professional camera, because if it's something simple that I just want a photo of to just have it, I don't need to take out my camera. Yeah. I don't need to make an elaborate thing and be shooting it like I'm shooting it to go to social media. And so you have to step back and sometimes you need to put away the camera and you need to truly disconnect. You know, it's crazy. Like when I was at Machu Picchu, I had LTE cell service. I had better cell service on the top of a mountain in the middle of the Andes in Peru than I do in some places in central Texas on the interstate. Like, I had full coverage with LTE. I could have FaceTimed. I could have gone live on Instagram.
Yeah.
I could have been listening to a podcast. But you're missing the thing that's in front of you. Yeah. And so you have to be able to disconnect a little bit. And if you're sunburnt, if something's taking too long, all of those kind of things, you just have to sit there and just look at what's happening in front of you and enjoy that.
Yeah.
You know.
All right, so let's move to a quick lightning round.
Okay.
You learned a lot through mistakes. What are, say, 3 tips that you would give to future travelers to Peru? Go.
Bring altitude sickness meds.
Okay.
If you absolutely have to take a 1-week trip, do the mountain stuff at the end, not the beginning, because you're going to be sick the entire trip. And 3, I would say, don't go to Miraflores, because that's where everyone tells you to go, and it's great, but Barranco is way cooler, and so sometimes like if you don't follow the travel guide, you find cooler things.
Yeah. All right, don't let Steven's misadventures dissuade you from getting out there and having your experience. I think you see us on the blog a lot of times doing things that maybe you wouldn't do. Maybe you would, I don't know. If you want to do it, come and join us. But a lot of people see us do things. So my last trip to Peru, I ate grubs for the first time. And everybody goes, why would you do that? I was like, why would I not do that? I mean, you try it once. They actually are pretty good. I would eat grubs over squash any day of the week. But yeah, I think the great lesson here is get out there and try that thing you wouldn't normally try, and just be in the moment and enjoy it. It might be miserable. You might just hate it. But have that experience and hate it.
Well, the thing is, like I travel to have an experience.
Right. Well, you got an experience.
I did. And so, like, it's easy to sit here and go, oh, my poor light skin. I was so sunburned. It hurt so bad. But that's why I win.
You feel pain?
Yes.
You can get sunburnt right here in Texas.
But in all seriousness, it's easy for it to sound like I'm complaining or like I had a bad trip.
Yeah.
And I didn't by any means. you know, like I had a fantastic trip. It was an amazing place. Like I honestly cannot wait to go back.
Yeah.
Even if I got every bit as sick and every bit as sunburned, I would go back and do it again. It was a fantastic
Life is
trip.
short.
It was a great experience.
All right. Well, we're gonna close that out here then.
Awesome.
The video, I'm gonna slow-mo in case. Grab one of them. What about if you go like this and then any other side one of these grab one?
Hi, Hector, Ricky, Brian. Let's see you eat the worm.
Alright, here we go.
I think it's dead.
The whole thing?
Oh yeah, do it. Do it.
That's pretty good. Oh yeah. Oh man, that's like corn nuts.
Corn nuts.
Shoot, that's good stuff.
All right, Rick.
Sooty! That's good stuff. Isn't it good? Delicioso! It's like a butter corn nut.